Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is July 18, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with RU Sirius. Where in the heck you calling in from, RU?
Mill Valley, California.
Mill
Marin
Valley. What a cool
County.
place. First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing is probably to be cruising without anxiety and in creative flow. That's kind of a new age cliche at this point, but I think that's probably the peak experience is just to be in creative flow.
I like that. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Um, well, I mean, I really like psychedelic information, really um, abstract in a sense that there is something else to communicate with other than human beings, uh, possibly animals and plants, but also something other. I do like that. I don't believe in it. I don't disbelieve in it, but it's my favorite form of information. It leavens everything else that seems like normal information, so that if you're sort of tapped in, then you can just watch the news, and the news is that much more illuminating or interesting or horrific, but within your flow. Uh, it's an Everything becomes an intriguing feed.
I like that. That was good. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I mean, apparently that's our evolutionary skill to we're info gathering creatures. We use information to predict what will happen in the next moment. Basically, I mean that's where the evolutionary impulse comes from, and it just has iterated since then, and it's evolved a great deal of complexity, so that it's not the next moment, it's the next weeks, months, years, millennia, however you like, for some people. But most of the time, most of us are gathering information to deal with the moment, to deal with the day. Uh, our brains, apparently, according to On Intelligence by Trip Hawkins, which seems like a pretty good book on neurology, our brains are prediction machines, and we're always gathering information to predict what might happen in the next moment or the next year to protect ourselves and to protect our fellows, hopefully. Um, yeah,
That
I
was
mean,
good. What you anticipated a whole lot we're going to get into. So
yeah,
let
but
me just
what I wanted to say is
go
that
ahead. Sorry.
the peculiar, extraordinary thing for human beings is the evolution of philosophies that rather than using our brains as prediction machines, tries to tap into the current moment.
Yeah.
This goes back to the Chinese Taoism and so forth. That's an amazing invention of human beings that sort of fight against the evolutionary dictates of how our mental mechanisms are built to work. So, yeah,
Yeah,
we can
that's
we can
be
be
here.
present and be getting ready for the future at the same time.
Yeah, dude, there's two things. Be here now, Ram Dass. You really evoke that in what you described so eloquent. You're really good with words. You really communicate on a grounded level. It's not high fluent, it's not this academia, cyberpunk academia. You're talking ground grounded to me, and I'm really understanding, I feel. But what besides Ram Dass's Be Here Now, you really evoked Wyndham Lewis, who said the artist, and not to be elitist, everybody, the artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future.
Nice. Yeah, I
Isn't that
like
an
that.
amazing?
Yeah.
That is, that's why Joyce was so jealous of Wyndham Lewis. But
Mhm.
here's the thing: is is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's innate, but as I've said, as human society and culture uh, has iterated, has grown as a result of this tendency, it's become more complex, and so we uh, gather, we as Leary was describing it, we both inhale and exhale information now. Uh, a lot of it, much of it confusing, much of it wrong. That's something that the early ecstatic predictions of cyberculture didn't really take into account too much. Much of it intentionally poisonous and so forth. But so we're in this really intensely strange info sphere where we're taking it in and spewing it out, and much of it is strange and confused at this point. And I think I've discussed in a number of places the idea that we're in a social singularity now, that we've reached a point, through by having billions of people on social media where we can't locate ourselves, we can't locate truth from fiction, even in the slightest. And of course, now we're adding AIs to that confusion. Um, so it's a marvelous and peculiar uh, realm that we're entering into. That's very psychedelic. It's a very non-solid, but as Doug Rushkoff has been saying, at the moment, it's a bummer.
Yeah. You evoke so much there of what we're going to get into right now. But I love when you talked about the simplicity and the complexity, because that's Frank Zingroni, one of the great McLuhanites, called his book
Mm,
Media Simplex. So he
mm,
blended simple and complex together.
yeah.
And, the great Michael Shields was saying, Are You Serious is one of the foremost Lyrians of all time. So you dropped Leary by minute 6. So that was beautiful.
Hmm.
The next question is, do thoughts create emotions?
I have no doubt that they do. I mean, I think there's a loop between them. Emotions create thoughts, thoughts create emotions. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Oh, I never decide what I think. Actually, I still don't know what I think.
That's
I never conclude. I mean, I have momentary thoughts, but
yeah.
no, I never know what I think. What's the
This
name
is
in the show? It's, everything you.
well, that's the I just hijacked this guy's show. He already called
Okay.
it. I'm probably
I always
wrong.
think of everything you know is wrong when I receive the
Right.
data about
That's
the show.
Fireside Theater. Thank God. I've
Yeah,
yeah, Phil Proctor and those and Peter Bergman, my heroes. But
yeah,
that's the bumper sticker down my street. It says, "Don't believe everything you think." But
they're
see,
beautiful.
this just to clear this up is what I'm after. Is it's me and you versus the wording on the question. So I'm off because I ask a question. You can answer it with a new question, or you could say I don't know, or you could say, well, let me reword your question. See, I'm for this sort of psychoanalyzing the actual wording because all words are metaphorical. But I don't know what I think until I. McLuhan said it, and Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. But
Hmm.
I will send you a copy of my book. I say I don't know what I think until I ask someone else what I should think or what they think.
Right. Yeah, it's good to have the interaction and the responses, but I stand by my way of viewing it is that I never solidify or
Yeah,
concretize certainty
yeah,
in terms of what I think. And certainly when I write something, oh, I I'm at a level of denial in terms of standing by what I write that could stand right up to Bob Dylan. It's just like,
Yeah.
nope, don't pinpoint me on my lyrics or my words. They move, they flow through, they're good for the moment. Use them as you will, but no, I don't know what I think at
Yeah,
all.
it's brilliant because this is what Woody Allen flipped McLuhan in Annie Hall. What Marshall said was a question. Do you
Right.
mean the whole fallacy is wrong? Woody made him say it as a statement, and that was
Mm.
flipping. Hey, you exposed McLuhan to the world. That's good enough because it actually evoked another great McLuhanism. A half a truth is still a lot of a truth. So if you give us McLuhan halfway, dude, you did pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that might be applicable to some of the disinformation I've been concerning people about. Is there might be some true half truths and all of that crazy nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so you don't have to.
just in terms of the level of alienation, some of these things express.
Yeah,
Some of this disinformation expresses a level of alienation that is valid if misdirected.
exactly. And then the next question is, can humans think without language?
That's an interesting question. I think that I think we do. I mean, apparently we're learning that most animals have more complex language than previously understood. So I guess it depends on what we mean by language. But uh, I think we can analyze our situation from a survival perspective, probably without what we think of as language. Sometimes
Yeah.
maybe we do better without language.
Hello, that's it. And Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Hmm.
What do you do when
You
language
got
does?
you got the pictures of William Burroughs holding a gun and getting ready to explode language entirely
Right.
as released by the people research publications.
I love research.
Yeah,
V. Bale.
destroy the word, Burroughs said.
Never.
I wish I could still do his voice. I used to do a good imitation, but I just don't. I don't have it now.
Yeah, another hero, V. Vale Research Publications. Thank
Oh,
you.
there's
And
what a
and big,
wonderful publisher.
big influence on me. But Burroughs said language is a virus. But what do you
Yeah.
do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
What do I do? Sleep probably.
That's good
Yeah.
answer.
I feel physical things.
Yeah,
Maybe raindrops or shower water. Uh, um, Sex maybe. Yeah, all those things. I mean, I sort of trance out on numbers a lot. I have
nice.
I don't know what the word is for it, number thing going. I
Yeah,
trance out on what my favorite songs are by numbering them.
yeah.
I escape language, and it allows me to sleep. Actually,
Yeah, that's it's also called list making. It's what Joyce
Mhm.
did in Penguin's Wake. He just makes these lists. So it's like
Yeah.
constantly. But your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking or more feeling beings?
Mm. Mm. Probably more feeling. I think probably most people are more feeling. Uh, I wouldn't credit most human beings with complex thoughts, which is not necessarily a criticism. Uh, there are different cultures and different ways of being throughout human history and all over the world today. But I would say that on the whole, yes, we're feeling. and we feel towards families or allies, and we have feelings that that there are enemies out there, human enemies that we have emotions about. So I think emotions have tended to dominate, whether that's a good thing or not. Probably not. But then if you try to be, that Mr. Spock or something, it bubbles up from underneath. So it's always there. It's something we need to learn how to use. What was it? Laurie Anderson, stand on your emotions and use them.
Beautiful.
Something like that. Yeah.
You know, in another powerful woman, Bridget Bardot said, "When I make love, I don't think." And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off when you're doing this sensuous thing? Or like meditators, they go, don't think about thinking, you know.
It's hard to turn it off, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
The soul. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the soul, but I mean it's a piece of language, the soul. So how do you think of the soul?
You know, this is what usually people say when I ask this question. It says, it depends on what you mean by thinking, or they usually go, it depends on what you think by the soul. So I always turn to Lily Tomlin and says, reality is just a collective hunch. You know, there's a collective hunch that people sort of think we know what the soul is, because they go the mind, the body, and the soul.
So, yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's kind of trick question, I think Alan's saying, because you're going, well, thinking's probably a function of the mind or something physical or the
Yeah, I think
brain.
Leary put the soul in the brain. His later philosophy was that something that seemed like how philosophers have described the soul simply exists in our neurology. But I mean, other people would say it's a mix of the mind and the body, and then
Yeah.
some might say it's an invisible force, that there's something else that, as Rudy Rucker said, moistens the world. I'm inclined to believe that, except when I haven't had any drugs in a long time, in which case I become very much a rationalist.
Yeah. And the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Yeah, well, are we machines? Yeah, I think that's a question with people are asking with AI now, and are going to be asking increasingly in the future. Is it thinking if there's no one in there having an experience, or no thing in there having an experience? And then we ask ourselves, is that thing having an experience, and how do we know? So I think we're still at the place where we don't know. I think it's quite likely that there will be genuine thinking machines, but I don't know why. I don't really know enough about artificial intelligence and cognition to be the person to say why I think that's likely to occur at some point.
I'm glad you brought up that word meaning, RU, because the next question, well, first of all, T.S. Eliot said they had the experience but missed the meaning. So do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think that as I get older, as my situation changes and I'm more of a homebody and less out in the world, taking trips and looking for ecstatic experience, I think I look more for meaning than for happiness, because I think my happiness comes from seeking meaning. My happiness comes from intellect, comes from giving meaning to ideas and passing them on to other people as sort of temporary flashes. I mean, I think I mean a lot of my pleasure these days, being less out in the world, or less out in ecstatic groupings. A lot of my pleasure just comes from being clever, actually, and sharing something that's clever with other people. Um,
You are
if something's funny,
yeah.
then that's a marvelously ecstatic thing for me.
You are clever. You're witty, and wit is an important trait that I respect and read of yours for many years. In fact, David Orban's Searching for the Question podcast you were on about a year ago, or in September, you said something that I think is very important. It's like, don't just settle for quotes or cute aphorisms. I mean, that's where V. Vale really affected me, because at the end of every research, he listed 5 pages of quotes. And I'm like, I'm going to start collecting quotes. And that was a big influence on me. And so what? You get the quote, then what? You just sit there? No, you reinvent it. So you said in that podcast, you said hell is other people, Sartre. And then you said, no, hell is other people's Twitters or tweets.
Tweets, yeah. Hell is other people's tweets, yeah.
See, that's making it what? That's reinvention. That's what we're supposed to do, reinvent.
I love reinventing. I mean, I also write lyrics, and I often start with an opening line just directly from another song, which makes me sympathetic to John Lennon when he got sued by Chuck Berry for starting a song with "Here Comes Old Flat Top."
Yeah,
that was bullshit. Of course, I open a song with I walked 47 miles of barbed wire, and then I go from there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun.
That's what it's all
when
about.
People when people don't recognize the what I'm quoting from, I get a little irritated, which I shouldn't. I have 2 songs that reference "Blank Generation" by Richard Hell, and I'm amazed that so many young people who love punk don't know "Blank Generation" by Richard Hell.
Oh my God, that is great.
I have "Bland Generation" and "Blank Panther Party."
No, I saw Stevie Tyler roller skating in Venice once, and I went up to him and I says, "You quoted Zappa in the middle of one of your songs. She was buns up, I was wheeling and dealing." I said, "Why did you do that?" And he goes, "'Cause that's the way I felt that day."
Yeah. God, that was a great one. Yeah, I
You
just
know,
listened to that recently, actually.
That's the history of music.
Hilarious.
You just, you repeat. Anyways,
well, that's the thing. I don't really go for the complaint that Chat GPT and other forms of artificial intelligence are sampling people's stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think it's part of remix culture. I think it's a legitimate part of remix culture.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Anyways, the where I got that question, do you more pursue happiness or meaning, is from Viktor Frankl, and he said meaning tends to last, happiness doesn't necessarily last. So does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Interesting. Well, Rupert Sheldrake used to hang out at the Mondo House, and he certainly had the idea that our awareness was out there somewhere, and we were tapping into it. I think that's a pretty good model. I tend to think that. I'm not sure that Rupert's particular form of science is correct, but as a generalization, like Keith Richards said, you go outside, you smoke a joint, and you pick up on something, and you turn it into a song.
Yeah.
I think that's true. But it's also it's other humans. It's the collectivity of our culture and all our reference points that we have stored inside, and then we connect it outward to us, something that's out there in the ether. So there's some kind of a what people call the global brain, perhaps out there that we tap into. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard to tell where it begins, whether it begins with the individual consciousness or if it's something that we tap into outside ourselves, or it's just a social conversation
Yeah.
that's never ending.
Yeah. It's Taylor Chardin's Noosphere or whatever. But what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Thought, I guess. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guess. You got that one right. There's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. Thank God.
Yeah.
So Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What
Hmm.
tool do you suggest?
Hmm. Oh boy. Um, well, the master in this case is global capitalism, I guess. And the tool is to understand capitalism. Uh,
Hello. Gee.
yeah, Marx might not have the whole story, but uh, explore wherever you can, try to understand capitalism and what it is and what it does and what we can do to prevent its damages.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of Frank Zappa saying, "Who are the brain police?" He wasn't
Mm,
saying, "Hey, the brain police are the mean capital, the global capitalists, or the brain police are in your head." He just
hmm
said, "Who are the brain police?" He just
Yeah.
posed the question. You figure
mhm,
it out.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, he put it onto the
he
individual. What will you do if you leave you alone and the plastic all melted and so is the chrome? Yeah. Yeah.
he put it
He
individual.
put
Yeah.
it to
What
the
was the
individual.
quote? Wait, what did you just quote by Frank?
Who are the brain police? Yeah.
Oh, you quoted a
What will
line.
you do if we left you alone and the plastic all melted and so did the chrome? So does the chrome.
Yeah.
Who are the brain police? I got all that early Zappa and completely committed to memory. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I used to be able to sing. We're all in it, only in it for the money from start to finish. Yeah,
Psychedelic dungeons popping up on every street.
yeah.
What new toy?
Thank goodness for him because there was no one else putting a critical eye on all that at the time. So I got to both embrace the psychedelic revolution and to know that there was a critique of it,
Yeah,
a really sharp critique, and Zappa was central to that.
Central. That's why Spencer, the Jefferson Airplane drummer, says, "Go ask Frank. He's the only one who's not fucking stoned and he's thinking." But anyways,
Yeah.
what new toy do you suggest?
Oh, geez. New toys. I'm not sure I have anything for you there. Uh, yeah. Maybe virtual reality will get interesting at some
Yeah,
point if there are enough people in there. I mean,
yeah,
I think if you look at social networks, what's the word I'm using thinking of? Uh, to me, they're only interesting when there's enough people,
yeah,
right? I mean, I'm still on Twitter because I have 10,000 followers there. I go to some other place and it's decentralized and all the discussions are distributed and sectioned off. And to me, that's not interesting.
yeah,
So to me, the best toy is the one that puts everybody in the same room. And the fact that it's been corrupted by the need or the desire for massive profits. I refer here to Facebook being the most successful one to put everybody in the world in the same room.
yeah,
That's a magnificent hack. That's an
yeah,
amazing feat of magic. I mean, it's deteriorated. It deteriorated because they're seeking profit, but it's also deteriorated because there are all these busybody technologists trying to make it more interesting by ruining the initial elegance of what it had originally offered, which is you just go on there, you see everything from all of your friends in order, and they see everything from you in order, and then they really mess that up. But it's still out there. It's still this singular giant room that billions of people are inside of.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, we call it face hook on your
Yeah,
crackberry. But that's all.
exactly.
What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, I mean, there's always stuff I have to do that I wish I didn't. I'm very much inclined to not want to have to do anything. So I worry about the calls that I have to make and the bills that I have to pay and the things that I absolutely have to do. I don't really worry too much about politics or global conditions, although I think over the last week or so, the pressing issue of a weather apocalypse has been very much on my mind. Now, one of the things, I mean, about social conditions now is that the situation of being bordering on complete hopelessness makes writing much more complicated. And when I realized how unlikely it was that things would get, how unlikely it was that things would get better and how likely it was that things were going to get very much worse very quickly, it became much more easy for me to write lyrics than to write essays. Because I'm not sure of the point of writing the essays, but I can experience the playfulness of writing lyrics. But then I got hired to write by Mindplex. And so now I'm writing essays, and much harder for me to write lyrics now that I'm writing essays. It's like two different parts of my brain, and it's very hard to tap to leave one and go back into the other one.
Right. Well, keep writing those lyrics too on the side, or put them front, whatever. But McLuhan, and it follows perfectly. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're the lyricists, the painters, the musicians. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions.
Yeah.
So I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
It's a good question. I mean, I think increasingly the impact of our technology is woven into our culture. So I think people are seeing what the impacts of our inventions are to a great degree, but they're so powerful in terms of over what's the word I'm looking for? Information overload.
Yeah.
So it is a popular cliche, but it's now just a moment to moment reality. I mean, I think the critique is in plain sight almost all the time, and that people are conscious of it, and kinds of dissatisfaction are expressed from left to right to all kinds of forms of alienation. The interpretations might not be great, but I think that the critique is pretty much merged with everything else in our world. I mean, you hear pretty lame broadcasters on CNN suddenly coming out with profound critiques almost as side comments.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose this has always gone on, but it's increasing now.
Yeah. It's good. And if you read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people, that's what he's doing. He's satirizing the information overload we're drowning in, and we can scoop our way out of it, like McLuhan's first book, The Descent into the Maelstrom, Edgar Allan Poe. But the question I have next is, do artists have moral obligation?
That's another good question that I wrestle with all the time. And I said earlier that I like to have a degree of Dylan-esque denial. Take responsibility for my words. No, I put my words out. Use them as you will. I don't know. I mean, I don't cancel artists who do bad things or say bad things. Cat Scratch Fever is still one of my favorite songs.
Thank you. You can separate the art from the artist.
I mean, radically. I mean, I watched Triumph of the Will twice, so
You know the name of Ted Nugent's book? Ted White and Blue.
Yeah, what a character.
Okay,
definitely part of Motor City Madness. I mean, you look at that whole history of Detroit rock, from the MC5 and Iggy and Alice Cooper, and Nugent is part of that culture. It all revolves around John Sinclair.
Exactly.
It's like MC5 were the kids, and the Stooges were the wayward cousins, and the Alice Cooper were the court jesters, and Nugent was the opposition.
That's where I'm from. I was born in Flint, Michigan, man. John Sinclair's mom taught Michael Moore poetry, and you left out the UFO dude.
Oh yeah.
Question Mark and the Mysterians.
Oh, I love Question Mark and the Mysterians.
Saginaw, Michigan. Same as Stevie Wonder. So are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I don't think I'm really afraid of ideas per se. I'm afraid of people going fanatical in a way that causes them to wound or kill other people. But I'm not afraid of the ideas. I'm afraid of the way whatever is motivating these human beings to go off the rails. I think I might have to part from you for a moment.
That's all right.
If you can keep the rap going, I'll be back in a few minutes.
I can keep the rap going. Yes,
good.
Indeed. And we want to thank RU Sirius because he indeed had a big impact on me, just like the Veil of research publications. In publishing the magazine Mondo 2000, RU Sirius from 1989 to 1993, he sort of established a new magazine mentality. And this was very important because eventually Wired took it to another kind of Playboy magazine coffee table layer, which we don't have to go into and criticize too much, but Wired indeed was the fastest growing magazine in the history of humans, and also declared Marshall McLuhan their patron saint, which was an interesting way to get this new cyberpunk psychedelia kind of society tuned into the major court jester and media satirist, political poet Marshall McLuhan. And Mondo 2000 was where I first read about pixel vision, which is right
I am back.
Right in time to hear my compliment. I just wanted to tell you, I gave a little history of Mondo 2000 and how, again, you had a big impact on me because you had an article on Tentatively a Convenience, who is an artist in Baltimore who had a Pixel Vision film festival, and that is
Oh yeah.
film, films made with a toy video camera. So I'm
Mhm.
just turning it around and thanking you because eventually I started Pixel This, which is an annual film festival celebrating films made with a toy video camera, like electronic folk art, as Craig Baldwin says it. And
Yeah.
he booked us many times at other cinema. And just to let you know, in November 12th, we'll have our 33rd annual Pixel This Film Festival. So
Nice.
you're sort of the root of starting that. So thanks for planting the seed.
Oh yeah, I remember. What was the particular camera that we discussed in that first issue? I can't remember.
Well,
Uh,
it's I don't know if it's first issue, but it's the
Fisher
Pixel
Price. Fisher Price.
Fisher Price Pixel 2000 is the name
Yeah,
of the camera.
I think it
Yeah.
was intended for kids. Actually,
It
it's a
is
great,
intended
great
for
tool.
kids, and
Yeah, we're
it
all kids.
taped audio and video on audio cassettes. But
Mhm.
let's go into you a little. What can you conjure up your earliest memory or one of them?
Oh, let's see. I can remember falling down the stairs in my suburban house, maybe about 5 years old. Because my mom didn't get angry very often, but that really got her angry. Um, I remember my mom playing rock and roll. Just started. I mean, I was born in 1952, so there might have been like one rock and roll record available, but she liked it and she was playing it. So I was raised in the beginning of rock and roll.
Beautiful. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
So I consider it a blessing. Last time I got stoned on weed, which is something I hardly ever do anymore. I was just flashing back. I was relating to myself at various points in my life, and being surprised that I could relate to myself at that point, but also wondering what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
What was I missing? You know, obviously I was missing a lot.
Amazing. And so tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Well, in my immediate family, my father was the intellectual in the family, and he was cynical and funny, a bit of an activist in civil rights. Loved existentialism. Loved James Baldwin. Uh, so he was a huge influence. And we parted ways in a way in the late '60s when I became a yippie. I became more extreme, but by 1972, he was borrowing my yippie button to go to parties and try to shock the bourgeoisie or whatever. But yeah, my dad was kind of a slightly to the left of liberal, and very smart. And he was pretty much self-taught. He graduated high school. He didn't go to college. So that's
Wow.
an influence. And then outside my original circle, I mean, the obvious thing would be Leary,
Yeah.
because he took me away, um, at a time when he wasn't taking a lot of other people away. And in the late '70s, he took me away from the depressive state of counterculture that felt like a losing game into the counterculture of technology. And I can't even claim that it was a good thing ethically, or that it's had good results, or it was the right thing to do, but it worked for me. It set my creativity in motion, caused me to come out here and make Mondo 2000, and caused a lot of delight in a lot of people as a result of that. So, I mean, I fell for Larry's Future History series of the late 70s and early 80s to a degree. I mean, I always had an out, you know, I always had the possibility that it was all, you know, that nothing good was going to come of it. And now I view it all as, I view that entire Future History series as one incredible piece of science fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really.
Brilliant science fiction that you could make any number of marvelous films out of, and probably has secretly influenced a lot of work. The other people that influenced me in a way, I had a couple of friends in the 70s, back when I was in my 20s in Binghamton, New York, who they were just very extreme. And one of them, he took over on, this brings us back to the Yippies, on Halloween of 1972, as part of a Yippie action. He took over the Nixon headquarters with a BB gun and hung a Viet Cong flag out the window, and started calling the media, declaring that the revolution had occurred, and ended up with a scene right out of Rebel Without a Cause, which with this guy coaxing him out of the room, coaxing him out of the building so that he wouldn't be shot by the cops. Very emotional, dramatic scene. And there was another guy who, I mean, basically is probably in some ways like a horrible criminal, but also like a tripster and a Marxist, almost like if he was more talented at his pursuit of crime, he'd almost be like the Joker, but
Yeah.
but also like psychedelic, and with the pretense of revolutionary intentions. And in some weird way, he really influenced me.
Yeah.
I won't even mention his name, but yeah, in
No,
some weird way,
it's
he
amazing. What you touched on is what Mike Kelly so deeply investigated with his art, the fine line between crime and art.
mhm.
You know, that's what caused Marshall and Warhol both to say art is anything you can get away with. And
Yeah, absolutely.
when I said that to someone, they go, "That sounds like Trump."
Yeah, and it does. Yeah, I mean that's the great trickster of our time is vulgar, the ruling class. Yeah,
The ruling
yeah.
class. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
No, I mean, my father was from a Jewish family. My mother was from a half Jewish family. My father was an atheist, self-declared atheist. My mom called herself agnostic.
Yeah.
She was more open to spiritual ideas. She turned me on to Herman Hesse, actually. Um, so no, we were raised pretty well outside of any religion. They would take me to view every kind of religious service. I don't know why they picked me out. I had two older brothers, 5 years older than me, but for some reason they decided that they would take Kenny out to see all kinds of different religious services. But no, I was raised outside of religion. I mean, we'd go to my uncle's house where my grandfather would be celebrating a Jewish holiday. Um, you know, but I just remember the food really is pretty much what I remember about it. I mean, I identify with Jewishness to a degree because of the history of Lenny Bruce and Abby
Yeah.
Hoffman and Woody
Yeah.
Allen and that whole and my father, that sense of humor that seems to be embedded in
Yeah.
Paul Krasner.
Krasner, yes, very good. And so, do you pray?
No. Maybe a few times on strong psychedelics, I might
Yeah.
have prayed for deliverance of some sort, but no, I don't pray. No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Um, that this doesn't last forever, because I hate the idea of anything that lasts forever. That there's an escape, but that this is it's a pretty groovy place, and you can just relax, and it's none of that horror that people have been promising.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that for the rest of my life.
Well, here's the hidden question, are you? That was an amazing answer, by the way. I love
Hmm.
that. The, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And this one I'll set up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole
Hmm.
from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Right. Yeah.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a
Hmm.
lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
It's interesting. I kind of don't think of enemies in terms of individuals. I think of enemies as political and social entities more than as specific individuals.
Yeah.
I, and I've had people who bother me, but that's, uh, you know, uh, mentally ill people
Yeah.
who come after you and think that you're doing something to them because there's something in their imagination. But I don't think of those people as enemies. I still think of them as friends, actually. Um, so yeah, I don't know how to respond to the idea of an enemy as an individual. I haven't really had the experience of having to consider that. Um, but acknowledging the enemy is like like the Republicans' plan to give all power to the president if a Republican gets elected. That kind of enemy. I think acknowledge it and spread the word and make sure people know that they're thinking about doing that, and suggest to people younger than myself that they be ready for violence if necessary. So
Yeah.
that'd be pretty much opposite of what Alan Watts is saying there.
Yeah. And Nassim Taleb says games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a
Yeah.
hero is.
Yeah.
And then someone said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control.
Mm.
Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day?
Right.
Or does he go, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, does punishment work?
Yeah. Does punishment work? I mean, up to a point, I think extreme enough intimidation might work on a lot of people. I mean, it probably works more as a control mechanism for people who won't go too far out on a limb. And
Yeah.
it probably doesn't work for people who are inclined to just go for it. And, I spoke of a friend earlier who influenced me who was sort of like a psychedelic version of the Joker. I don't think all the punishment he experienced which involved imprisonment and psychiatric hospitals and stuff. I don't think it discouraged him. I think it made his narrative more interesting for
Yeah.
himself
Yeah.
and for other people.
You're touching on something that McLuhan said in a line that goes, understanding is not having a point of view. And it's sort of like what he could, you have pattern recognition and you get comprehensive awareness. You get the big picture.
Right.
So where do you think you got this sense of comprehensive awareness? Like Pascal says, in order to understand anything, you have to know this end of the spectrum and that and everything in between. Did you get this sort of comprehensive awareness from the way your parents raised you or on your own?
I think it's a mix. I think it's from my parents, but also it's from the cosmic aspect of culture that I was brought up in. I mean, the mediated culture in which even just in the days of television and radio and counterculture, everything seemed to be coming through you, and then everything would be coming back out of you. Actually, my favorite collection of songs is something that I call Zeitgeist Savant Idiot Glee. So I kind of view myself as a zeitgeist savant. I don't know where my ability, such as it is, if some want to acknowledge it, to synthesize cultural influences and then spew them back out. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but clearly being a media baby is a big part of it.
Yeah, that's really, really well put. I agree with you. In fact, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. Stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner says, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the situationist's statement, basically, that all mediation was a facsimile of experience, and at some point we should make all that fall away. I mean, they related it to radical anti-capitalism in France. So, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, I definitely I like experiencing artifice myself, but I don't know why we have to do that. I think maybe our brains hunger for input that doesn't appear obviously available outside of creations that we make for ourselves out of our minds and out of our language and our ability to play with images and so forth. I mean, if we were wise enough, there might be enough information, I mean, just under the water. It's coming up to attack us now to remind us that it's there. Perhaps there's enough information out there, and we don't really need to have our minds toyed with and played with and entertained and evoked by these external performative things. I mean, the whole world is performative now, and people are starting to question it, mainly to just expressing dissatisfaction with it, without really questioning it on a deep level. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. I just know that I need human mediated expressions to make me makes me laugh and cry and all those things.
Yeah.
Put it in a movie. I just sitting around by myself. I'm not going to start weeping, but you put those emotions into a good film, and suddenly there it is. It brings it out. A Joni Mitchell song or whatever. No.
Yeah, Joni Mitchell, exactly. And it's funny because McLuhan wrote books from 40 to 80, 1940 to 1980. In mid-career, he updated the global theater. Excuse me. He updated the global village, which he got from Wyndham
Right.
Lewis, the idea to the global theater because the
Right.
Proscenium Arch shot up, with Sputnik, and everybody, the world became a stage, as Shake Your ESP ear, Shakespeare said years before, the world's a stage, and everybody became an actor on YouTube, and it
Oh,
was,
yeah.
we all became actors on the global stage. So tell us your through line, especially these tipping points where you're growing up, you're reading, you're understanding this culture you're swimming in to a point, and then you say, well, I want to be a writer. And then
Mm.
where's the tipping point where I want to be a lyricist and a musician? Did you study this in high school and college, or was there a tipping point where you could say, I want to be this, that's my calling? Where's your compulsion tipping points?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it never happened actually.
That's
um,
good.
and when I was revisiting my life a few days ago after having a little weed for the first time in a long time, um, I noticed how much I've floated. I've just floated.
Yeah,
I've not had. I've been without definition, and other people come along and give me definition. Like if I edited a magazine that became kind of popular, that gave me
yeah,
definition. If I write a piece and people respond to it, that gives me definition.
yeah,
Um, and when I was in high school, uh, in English class, I wrote something, and the probably around 17 years old, and the teacher said, you're a writer. You can be a writer, and that just went right past me. Didn't 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 impress me. I was interested in the Yippie revolution. I wasn't interested in being anything.
yeah.
Being a writer didn't interest me. Later on, around 20 years old, I presented some text to the local uh, daily newspaper, the morning newspaper, and said I could write a counterculture column for you. And they said, this is great. Yes, we'd like you to do it. And I just drifted off and didn't do anything about it. So
Wow.
um, finally in college, I went to college late. I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s, and I wrote a piece of fiction and for a fiction class, and it just apparently was heads and tails above everybody else, and I won an award and all kinds of stuff. I think it was at that point where I said, "Oh, this is cool. This is a good identity to be a sort of, it was a pretty nihilistic story at the time, just before I was getting the full impact of the Leary Wilson philosophy. I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. I can be a sort of surrealistic, nihilistic punk fiction writer. So that's where it started, and I never really continued with the fiction writing. I was writing a book called Dr. Fuck, or the Humorous Permutations of Human Flesh and Blood in the DNA Age, in 19 what year was it? 1981. And I moved to California to live it instead. I didn't finish writing the novel.
It's amazing. We're really similar in age and moving, because I moved in 80 to Venice. And
Mm.
so, and when you said Leary Wilson, you meant Robert Anton Wilson?
Robert Anton
Yeah,
Wilson,
yeah,
yeah.
good. Good. So then when is it you're writing lyrics, or are you playing music, dabbling in music all that time?
Yeah,
Um,
I started, I mean, before I did High Frontiers and Mondo 2000 in upstate New York, in Rochester, New York, Brockport, New York. I was a lead singer in a band called Party Dogs, and we used to perform at the local punk club Scorgies. For about 2 minutes, we were the second most popular band in the local new wave punk club, and I wrote my lyrics then. I had done stuff before that. I'd recorded stuff and had gotten played on local radio in Binghamton, a couple of songs. So I've been doing this. I also started underground newspapers in the early 70s. So I've been doing both those things back and forth simultaneously my entire life. When I first moved to the Bay Area with the notion of starting a psychedelic technoculture magazine in 1982, the other thing on my list was to start a band, which didn't really happen. Ended up having a recording project in 1993, starting in early 90s during the heyday of Mondo 2000, a band called Mondo Vanilli. And we recorded some, what's the word for it? Samples, examples. I can't think of the word. Anyway, we recorded some stuff and we took it down to LA and shopped it around. And we gave audio cassette to Trent Reznor, who had just had a housewarming party at the house where Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson girls. So we went to the party with Timothy Leary. Pretty trippy set of circumstances. No weird vibes at the place really at all. It was fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, we left this tape behind, and Reznor liked it. So he created. He was being given a record company by I can't remember the name of the record label, but it was Nothing Records, which I'm sure you've heard of. Was a subsidiary of a subsidiary, and he
Yeah.
had the impression he could do what he wanted with it, and he got us going recording music, and then soon discovered that he couldn't do whatever he wanted with it, and our album never got released. He had to pick one artist who was recording, and Marilyn Manson was already well ahead of the game. He already had a big following. He was already doing shows, and he had already put together a good album. So he went with Marilyn Manson, which, however we might view it ethically today, was a good decision financially and possibly even creatively.
Yeah.
But we
Well,
got
that's
left in the
interesting.
lurch.
Are you? Because I'm curious about your lyric writing and your music writing. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play when you're writing a song?
Yeah, usually it comes from a place of play, and the words pop into my head. And the misfortune in some cases is that I just get a verse and a chorus, and I feel like there has to be more. If I'm collaborating with the musician, sometimes they'll say, yeah, there needs to be another verse and a chorus. I always feel like the next one is not as good as the stuff that popped into my head. So a lot of that is stuff that pops into my head. Some of it is didactic. I'm responding to political realities or social realities. I try to mutate them a little bit so that they're less didactic, because I don't really like that.
Yeah.
But it comes out in different ways, and it usually it starts with no intention other than to play with words and to have a theme, pick out a theme, sometimes around sexuality, around just play, really.
Yeah.
Intention is playful, and when people ask me my lyric, you'll be interested in this. When people ask me what has influenced my lyrics, what my lyrical style is like, I would like to write like Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan, but I think it comes out sort of like Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
So somewhere in the back of my mind, there's a great influence from the satirical aspect of Zappa.
It's beautiful.
And the being clever thing that comes from Zappa and from Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
A bit, yeah.
I want you to watch. I made a 3-minute film recently of when Bob Dylan went to Frank Zappa's house and asked him to
Oh,
produce.
nice.
And
I remember reading about that.
it's
Yeah.
really a fast little 3-minute thing, but it covers a lot of what you just talked about. And it's really cool because Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your listener when you're writing your lyrics?
It's a bit, if it's not, most of them don't get recorded, which is a frustration. And then if they're recorded, if it's not heard, then that's another frustration. So for instance, my biggest success was a song in a video recorded by Creosote Cowboy called Punching a Nazi. And that was only like 5,000 views on YouTube, and it got yanked away. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go for a moment. I'll be back.
No problem. I got it covered. And so I do recommend people go to RU Sirius's channel and you can watch that very video. Or no, he just said it got pulled. So you can investigate more of his music, lyrics, and interviews. And I will tell you a story that is my personal encounter with RU Sirius. I was in the midst of interviewing Robert Dobbs, and we did 2 dialogues that were transcribed. One was Bob Dobbs explains the 10 thunders of Finnegan's Wake, and the other one was called Entertainment Sucks. So Entertainment Sucks was an intriguing interview that I did with Robert Dobbs, and we felt it would be perfect for Mondo 2000. And so we sent a copy off, and I remember talking to RU Sirius on the phone and told him this is an article that we would hope you would consider publishing. And he expressed interest. And then we never heard from him for several years. And I was promoting events, producing events at Midnight Special Bookstore in Santa Monica, one of the oldest political bookstores in the world. And there was RU Sirius booked as a speaker promoting one of his books. And eventually that article, Entertainment Sucks, was published by Flipside magazine, which was long-running punk magazine in LA, and sort of spawned all the kids from the Vandals to Matt Groening and the Simpsons, and endless amount of punk rockers were influenced by Al Flipside's magazine Flipside. And there standing at the magazine rack was RU Sirius, and I walked up to him and said, "Oh, look, there's Flipside magazine," and he was looking at it. And I got to the bottom of the conundrum is, why didn't we ever hear from you about publishing Entertainment Sucks? And he said, I loved the article. I wanted to publish it, but I got sort of censored or overridden by other people on the board, or blah, blah, blah. Whatever happened, it didn't happen. So it was fun because I got to the root of the story that was unexplained for so many years. So there's nothing like the human encounter to clarify things over email, telephone, telegraph, these 3 communication modes we have: spoken word, printed word, and electronic word. Which one do we put the most weight on? And how much satisfaction in seeking grounded communication in each one. Also, in 2000, RU Sirius ran for president as a candidate for the Revolution Party. So we will definitely at some point get into dialogue on what is the difference between rebellion and revolution. I've often said something someone taught me many years ago, that the revolution is two people talking. So indeed, this is been two people talking, and we'll be continuing with RU Sirius in a few moments. I do recommend also on YouTube seeking out David Orban, Orban, Searching for the Question. His episode with RU Sirius a few months back is important. They discuss a lot of the topics that we haven't gotten to in this interview. And one is this movement, DIY, do it yourself. Back to Al Flipside.
All right.
Yeah, I was just praising you with your manifesto on DIY, and you can watch back the little story about our encounter at Midnight Special Bookstore. But we got about 10 more minutes.
I don't remember, huh? Midnight's.
Yeah. Well,
No.
listen to it, because we have about 10 more minutes. And then I was wondering if we could just schedule a part 2, maybe 2 or 3 months down the line, because I only got to some of my questions. And
yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah,
really
I remember meeting you at a bookstore. Did we? You were writing for an interesting magazine, I think.
You got good memory, are you? And then we did an interview at Oddball Film and Video, Stephen Forrest's amazing venue. So let's just continue on music for a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up for this part 1. And I'm curious. My friend says the 3 T's of music are taste, technique, and theory. So you can learn how to play, you can know what structures are, chords. How does one acquire taste?
Oh, geez. I'm probably overly influenced by writers when it comes to musical tastes. So, I have the taste of rock writers, which means that rather than loving Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I love the New York Dolls and Lou Reed. I actually relate this to how one looks at art and artifice, right? I mean, if you appreciate Warhol and Duchamp, then you appreciate the Ramones. And if you don't, then you think, what's going on with this? These guys they're not craftsmen like David Crosby. They're not, or Frank was a craftsman. But Frank was cool. I mean, he got what's going on with punk. So to me, technique, I don't even think about it. I go back to, certainly my first love with rock and roll was what I heard when my mom played it, and it was raw stuff. It was Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard and Elvis, and it was Elvis before he went into the army. It was just wasn't a lot of technique going on there. Actually, wasn't. I mean, there is technique. There are roots to it, and rhythm and blues and so forth. It's more refined than it appears, but nevertheless, to me, it's about passion. It's about letting go.
Yeah.
Immediately felt an attraction for Iggy Pop
Yeah.
when that was going on. I mean, I was a person that, like in the late '60s, there were the people who liked everything except for the Stooges and the Velvet Underground and
Yeah.
Alice Cooper and early Alice Cooper and all that. And then there were the people who liked everything plus the weird bands. And then there were people who only liked the weird bands. And
Yeah.
I was in the middle. I
Yeah.
liked the big ones like the Jefferson Airplane and yeah, Grateful Dead were okay. Uh, Loved Zappa, of course, but I also immediately loved the weird stuff. I was immediately intrigued by the Velvet Underground in 1967. I mean, a little scary for a 14-year-old when you hadn't
Yeah.
heard stuff like that. Even Are You Experienced had a certain edge to it the first time you listened to it.
Oh yeah.
There hadn't been stuff like that before. But
Well,
yeah,
that's good.
I
Listen.
think about technique a lot, actually.
Yeah. Well, no, technique and theory, I'm not asking you to think. It was mainly this word taste, because here's the McLuhan
Taste,
quote.
yeah,
Here's the McLuhan quote I'm curious your reaction to. And
yeah.
I don't say these because I agree or disagree. They're just like he said, they're just probes. He
Hmm.
said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
Hmm.
Any comment on that?
I'm sure that must be true. One of the things that fascinates me when I listen to music is how much repetition goes on
Yeah.
and how I forget when I'm writing lyrics that I can use lots of repetition. I don't need that many words. Whereas when I got to do the vocals more frequently, I will be able to tap into that and use repetition and notice that I can play with something. But when you're just writing, it's you lose track of that. So I think like music is. I mean, today it's probably less so because the cultures are so mixed that it's no longer that closely related to your particular language. Although, I mean, I'm sure English, broadly speaking, has become the language of most music that communicates to most people in the world now, with Spanish coming on strong.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
What's
and I mean
more?
the African American dialect, Black dialect, has been so essential to everything that has gone on in music during my lifetime. And I mean,
Yes.
in a lot of ways, it was hidden from view. You didn't realize how much of that was how many of the idioms were being taken from blues and African American culture.
Yeah. What's more fundamental, music or language?
Hmm. I'd love to think that music is more fundamental. But people are talking about the universe as being a sound, actually.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, going back to those crazy hippies and the Om vibration. Yeah, I'd like to think that yeah, music is probably more essential than language. Although um, I always like hearing some words with my music during the rave days. Uh, that was okay, but I still, wanted to
Yeah.
listen to that the egomaniac on stage with a point of view. Like Mondo, we were supposed to be all about the electronica or about uh, industrial music. And
Yeah.
back at the ranch, everybody was listening to Elvis Costello.
Yeah.
It seemed probably like it was reflecting what was going on in our lives more than this other stuff.
Perfect lead in. Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Hmm. That would be your guy, Frank. I mean, God, just about everything on Uncle Meat.
Yes, very
Hilarious.
good.
Yeah.
And so Thelonious Monk, a hero of mine said, in fact, this great artist in Venice said, Monk heard all the notes Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
Mm,
And, this is Monk's, he knew about this. He said, silence is the loudest sound in the universe. How do you integrate silence or not having words or any sort of that gap when you're writing a song? How do you know how to do that, or what's the process?
I sense it. I mean, when I'm writing lyrics, I sense that there's a space between the
Yeah.
lyrics, or there's a shift that requires a space. And I'll actually put it, because I'm not doing my own vocals more recently, I'll actually put, that there has to be a break here, that there has to be so many meters sometimes, or the nature of the break, or how it should be conducted. I have one song where I demand a combination of Jimi Hendrix and Ornette Coleman,
Oh,
but
wow.
I'm not sure I'm ever gonna get it. But I know the one guy who wants to work on it, he could just about do it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, my favorite work to my lyrics has really been done with somebody who calls himself Scrappy Duchamp, with the band Mondo Vanilli. He fills everything in pretty much. He doesn't use space a lot. He's very Beatles influenced, very Brian Wilson, Frank Zappa influenced, very much different from the kind of raw stuff that I've been saying is my favorite stuff. But the fact that he can do that stuff just amazes me. So I always, if I can get him to do some work, I'll do that. But yeah,
Beautiful.
he doesn't use a lot of silence actually.
Well, beautiful. Scrappy Duchamp on this podcast. And, Ruth Draper, one of the first sort of kind of one woman performance artists, said the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you.
Mm-hmm.
It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds really good, but how do you do that? Like when you were doing this punk thing in New York, like you were bringing that audience, up onto the stage with you, and they were sharing that experience. How do you do that?
Yeah, except that it wasn't literal. I mean, that was one of the things that was demanded by the rave culture, is to get the individual ego off the stage and just pass it back around. People gave a little bit of a special credit to the DJ or whatever, but so in a sense, you don't really do that. I mean, I definitely participate in performance works, particularly in the late 70s, where there was no division between the audience and the people who initiated the performance. In fact, my history of Mondo 2000, which someday might get published, opens with going to see the Living Theater in Ithaca. And that was a situation where they came off the stage and they really dragged the audience, got the audience up on their feet, literally, physically at times, which I note in the book might be called abuse today. So we live in such a paranoid, touch negative culture. That's a whole other area that probably won't have time to go into today, and probably be smart not to anyway. But
it's amazing, because we will get into it in part 2, because that's Judith Milana and Julian Beck, who did Living Theater.
Marvelous. Yeah.
Their quote is amazing. We believe in the theater as a place of intense experience, half dream, half ritual, in which the spectator approaches something of a vision of self-understanding, going past conscious to unconscious, to an understanding of the nature of all things.
Wow.
Boy,
Wow.
you had a big opening there, seeing them in Ithaca.
Yeah, I was like 16 or 17 years old. Yeah. It was amazing. Everybody took off their clothes. I mean, I was just in the back of the audience. I was a little kid. Some of the people there could have swallowed me. I was so small.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
that was
when I do my years of drifting in the sort of mid 70s, being sort of partially homeless, my only thing was I had a copy of Artaud anthology, Antonin Artaud, and
yeah.
that was my touchstone. I was reading about theater as a dream state and as
Yeah.
confrontation and so forth.
Well, this has been a really dream come true. RU, we really got to go deep, and I love to go
Yeah,
sort of below the surface instead of people just doing kind of stock lines and getting to
yeah.
the root like the iceberg. And I appreciate this. So let's schedule a part 2, and I'll send you some possible dates. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcasting button, I want to thank you so much for enlightening me today. And for 30 or 40 years you've influenced me, so thank you
All
so much.
right. Well, I'm glad that we've had the chance to talk a number of times. All right,
thank
and I'll see you next time.
thank you, RU. This has really been nice. Appreciate it.